Okay, this is the tutorial for parts 18 and 19 of the hydraulic arm project, fixed and movable finger. Looking at our drawing, this is two parts because we'll create the model as one sketch and extrusion, and then we will separate it into two separate saved parts to be used in the assembly. Looking at our drawing, first of all we're going to check for our overall dimensions. Here at the bottom we see that our overall width is 3.5 inches. Our overall height is 3.25. And then on our right side view we see our thickness at 0.375. That's where we'll start. We'll come back to all of these other details here in a minute. In Inventor we're going to start a new part. Select New. Dimensions are in inches for this part, so make sure you're in your English folder and that you're selecting standard inches.ipt. Create. As always, click OK on that error message. We're going to start a new sketch. This one will start in our XY plane on our front view. Create a rectangle. From our drawing, our width for that rectangle was 3.5 inches. We're going to select our dimension tool, click this line, enter our dimension of 3.5 inches. Now, our rectangle has become invisible. We're going to click Zoom All. We'll bring it back to where we can see it. Click our right hand line here, enter our height of 3.25 inches. That creates the extents of our rectangle. At this point we're going to finish the sketch and we're going to extrude to our depth of 0.375. This creates the block out of which we will make the part 18 and 19. Okay, next step. Looking at our drawing, one thing that is unique about this part is a lot of the dimensions are based off of this center line and a few off of this center line. Both of those center lines for the center line for this hole right here. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to draw this hole so that we can come back later and use the center point of that hole to base some of our other dimensions. Okay, a couple details on the hole. We notice here that our diameter is 2 inches. From the left-hand edge, the hole is centered at 2 inches. And from the other dimensions on the drawing, we don't see a height of this hole. Looking at the drawing, we're going to make the assumption that the height of this hole is centered on our block. Going back to our sketch, we're going to start a new sketch here on the front view. Starting our hole, we'll select the circle tool and we'll draw our circle here. First thing we'll do is we'll identify the diameter of that hole or that circle as 2 inches. Notice we're using a sketch for this circle instead of a hole tool. Next thing we'll do is we'll dimension our distance from this left-hand edge. We'll select the left-hand edge. We'll select the center point of the hole. Moving that down, we'll identify that as 2 inches. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create a driven dimension. We're going to click this line, pull it over here, click Accept for the driven dimension. We're going to use that dimension to dimension the distance from this center line to the hole. How we'll use it is we'll select this and divide it by 2. That will place the center point of this hole halfway between the bottom line and the top line of this driven dimension. Okay, that centers up our hole. The next step is we're going to return to our drawing for the next detail. The next two features that we will create on this part is this angled cut and this angled cut. Looking at those, both of those start at 1.25 from the front edge. And then here in the middle, we'll notice that we have a dimension from the center line. We see this 0.25 from the center line up to this point on the angled cut. And we see a distance between the two of 0.5. Returning to our drawing, we're going to first project geometry to create the outside edge of this block, and then we'll draw 2 angled lines. At this point, the dimension of those lines is not critical. We'll enter those next. First dimension is from this point to the front edge. From our drawing, that distance was 1.25. Now, the second thing we need to do is we need to dimension the distance from this point to the center point of our circle. That's the dimension on the drawing that is labeled as 0.25. Okay, now we're going to repeat that process with the top angled cut line. And so we're going to dimension from the front edge to the top end point and enter that as 1.25. We're going to dimension from this right hand point to this center point, and we're going to dimension that as 0.25. Okay, that'll create the angled cut lines on the front of our block. We're going to return to the drawing and look at the details for this angled cut here, and then we'll follow up with some of the details down here. For the angled cut on the top left of the block, we're going to be using a new feature on the dimensioning tool. We'll notice that this point corresponds to the 0.825 that we see in the top view, but that we don't have a distance to this point here. Instead, we have this 45-degree angle symbol. To create that, we'll first draw that line on the back of the block. The first distance we have is a distance from the front edge to this point. On our drawing, that distance was 0.825. The next distance we have is an angle dimension. Since this line and this line are coincident at this point, we can enter an angle dimension by selecting those two lines. The angle dimension will come out. Right now it is labeled at 46. We're going to enter the 45 degrees from our drawing. That creates the back angled cut. Now, we're going to work on this bottom feature here. Looking at our drawing, a couple things we noticed about that bottom feature. There's a line that comes vertically with a height of 0.2625 and a distance from the left-hand edge of 0.375. And we also have up here a line that is extended on the center line of the block and extends over the distance here of 0.375. If you notice, this 0.375 line extends up through both of these holes and the end of this line. The first thing we'll do on this feature is draw this line and this line. Once again, our distances are a height of 0.625 and a distance from the left-hand edge of 0.375. On our drawing, we'll begin those two lines. We'll come here to this point. We'll draw vertically. We're going to dimension that line. First the height, 0.625, and then the distance from the left-hand edge to the line of 0.375. Okay. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to create a line, and we're going to hover over top of the center point here to create a line that aligns with the center point. We'll extend out this distance. You notice that we're getting a dotted line showing that it extends and aligns with this, and that is the location of that line. When you hit the escape key, that will close out our line tool. Now we have this line created here. We have a line created here. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to create these two holes, and the last part of our feature is we'll create this curved tangent line combination. Going back to our drawing, checking those holes, we have a note here with a diameter that says 0.25 and 2 holes. Both of these holes will then be dimensioned at 0.25. Notice that the distance from the left-hand edge for these holes matches up with the line we just created at 0.375. The distance from the center line down to these two holes is located here at 0.375 and here at 0.375. Creating both of those holes, on our drawing, we'll start a circle. We're gonna go ahead and use this align tool here. One thing we want to avoid is accidentally, which we almost did, catching that line, any of these other lines here. So we're going to intentionally go just a little bit low, and then down here we're going to again line up with that circle and create a second line circle here. Now, dimensioning the diameter of those two circles from our drawing, 0.25, and here from our drawing, 0.25. Now, both of these circles are dimensioned in their height from the center line. Click the center line, click the center point of the circles, pull this over here, enter that dimension as 0.375, and repeat the process on the second circle, center line to center point. Bring this over here and enter that as 0.375. Now we have created our two circles, and we have our two lines. The last detail here is to create this feature. Coming back to our drawing, This feature is combined of two things. It has an arc here with a radius of 0.375, and it also has this line that attaches to it. To create this arc, we're actually going to draw a circle with a diameter. Here, our radius is 0.375. We're going to double that to a diameter of 0.75, and then we're going to draw what's called a tangent line from the top of this point to this circle. Okay, starting that feature, we're going to create a circle with a concentric center point here, and we're going to dimension that circle to a diameter of 0.75. Notice that that creates a circle. It touches this outside line. We'd call that a tangent. And then we're going to create our tangent line. We're going to start at this circle, and we're going to come up here. Now, as we zoom in on that, you'll notice this symbol pop up. And we want to find the point right where that symbol shows. That symbol represents a tangent. It's a circle that touches a line on one point. Click there. Now, as we look at this, there's some things we don't need. We don't need this section of the circle. We're going to use a tool called Trim, you find right here. And we're going to trim out this part of the circle that is not needed in our drawing. Alright, that should complete the sketch of our part. We're going to click Finish Sketch, and we're going to extrude. Starting our extrude, we want to select this part of the drawing in here that includes the claw. When we do that, we notice that we're not getting an extrusion on these features here. So, to get an extrusion on those features, we're going to cancel. We're going to return to our sketch. We're going to right-click and do an Edit Sketch. Alright, to clarify our drawing, what we're going to do is we'll first select this projected line and delete it. We might do that twice just to make sure we get rid of it. Then, we're going to intentionally create a line between this point and this point here. And we're also going to clarify the extents of our piece by connecting these lines around here. Okay. Now, one thing we want to check is we're going to zoom in here, and we want to make sure that this line and that point are coincident. Alright, it already is. Good. Finish sketch. Now, we should have a well-defined sketch at this point. We're going to check our extrude tool again. Yes, we do. Good. Alright, we're going to click OK on our extrude. Except that we have something interesting here in that we want to do, we want to keep this section and get rid of the rest. So what we're going to do is we're going to select this option. This is an intersect option. What that does is it takes our new material and our old material and keeps the common area. In this case, the common area is our claw. And we'll click OK. Alright, at this point, we have the outside of our sketch created. We're going to save that file. That's going to be File Save As. Of course, we're in our Hydra Arm folder, and we're going to call this Finger Master Part. You notice that I haven't put any numbers on this. We want to save this so we can come back to it. But our next step is then to create two pieces to this drawing. Of course, click OK on this. The last step, and we want to create both the bottom and the top parts of this. To do that, we're going to create a sketch on this top surface. And we're going to create a rectangle. We're going to use this as a common point and create a rectangle that will encompass the top of this claw. Finish sketch. What we're going to do is we're actually going to cut away the entire top of this. Click OK. Now that gives us the bottom finger. At this point, we're going to click File. We're going to save that in our Hydra Arm folder. And this will become Part 19, Bottom Finger. And we're going to save. Okay, and click OK. At this point, we've saved it as Part 19, Bottom Finger. We're going to delete that process here. We've already saved it. We don't need to keep that anymore. We're going to go back to our original sketch. We're going to repeat the process of cutting away that top, except that this time when we draw the rectangle, we're going to identify the bottom and cut that away. Extrude, cut. That'll get rid of that bottom. We'll click OK. And now we have our top finger. Repeating the process here, we're going to save as, and this will become Part 18, Top Finger.